Good evening. I'm Carolyn Schoenberger, and I'm delighted to have with us Salvador Cicero, who's a private attorney and also is a president of the Hispanic Lawyers Association in Illinois. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, thank you. So, welcome to Immigration Issues, hosted on behalf of the Chicago Legal Clinic. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Chicago Legal Clinic, first in English and then in Spanish. And then Salvador and I have a lot to talk about, particularly after everything that's been going on. So the Chicago Legal Clinic was founded in 1982 by two recent graduates of DePaul University College of Law. They wanted to create a low-cost legal clinic in the South Chicago area. Now, at one point in time, the Chicago area, South Side, had a lot of steel mills, people worked, they went to restaurants, they had businesses there, they owned homes. But when the steel mills started closing, many of the businesses had to go out of business, people lost their jobs, people lost their homes, and there was no legal access for them at an affordable price. So the Chicago Legal Clinic was opened in 1982. It was one room, and the name at that point was the South Chicago Legal Clinic for Immigrants. After that, when more offices started, it became the Chicago Legal Clinic. So now there are 4 offices in different neighborhoods: South Chicago, Pilsen, where I work, Austin, downtown, plus the Chicago Legal Clinic has 2 free programs at the Daily Center: Chancery, where you can go if you want to get your name changed, a foreclosure program, and in a separate program, child support issues. Additionally, the Chicago Legal Clinic runs a legal clinic for students at Harold Washington College, where I work. If you have a problem dealing with child support, foreclosure, Social Security disability, immigration, real estate, please contact the Chicago Legal Clinic Monday through Friday between 9 and 5 in the afternoon by calling the number at the back of the screen, 773-731-1762, 773-731-1762. And I want to mention that we live right now in very difficult times. We live in times when we're going to talk about the separations at the border, detentions. We want to tell people to be careful out there. People are constantly saying, I know someone who did this. Every case is different, and you have to be very careful who you talk to, because there are people who are there and take their money. So if you're going to seek assistance, if you're going to want to do something with immigration, please talk to a licensed attorney and someone who has experience in dealing with Chicago experience in dealing with immigration. This is not only for immigration advice, although, again, with immigration, you're talking about one penalty: deportation. So please spend the time getting the correct advice. I'm now going to talk to you in the Spanish language, and because I forgot to put my glasses on, this is going to be very interesting. Entonces, buenas tardes, me llamo Carolina Schoenberger y quiero decirle un poco de la Clínica Legal de Chicago. La Clínica Legal de Chicago fue establecida en 1982 por 2 nuevos abogados que querían ayudar gente que vive en el sur de Chicago. Antes de 1980 había muchas acerías en el sur de Chicago, pero se cerraron a las acerías y la gente que trabajaba en las acerías perdieron sus trabajos. También los negocios en el sur de Chicago sufrieron por la falta de clientes. En este barrio no había ninguna oficina legal ofreciendo ayuda a bajo costo. Entonces, los 2 abogados establecieron la Clínica Legal de Chicago en un solo cuarto. Actualmente hay 4 oficinas de la clínica en el sur de Chicago, Pilsen, donde yo trabajo, Austin, y en el centro también hay varias oficinas de cortes que ofrecen ayuda legal gratis a la gente con problemas de mantenimiento de los niños, foreclosure. También si quiere cambiar su nombre. Hay también una oficina en Harold Washington College que ofrecen ayuda legal gratis a los estudiantes. Soy profesora a Harold Washington College. Si tiene un problema legal como inmigración, violencia doméstica, bienes raíces, 773-731-1762, 773-731-1762. Hay de llamar entre las horas de 9 de la mañana hasta las 5 de la tarde, de lunes hasta viernes. También quiero decir algo, en esta época feo hay de tener cuidado. No acepta aviso de cualquier persona. Si tiene un problema en particular, inmigración, hay de hacer consultas con alguien que es un abogado que tiene una licencia. Es muy importante porque ahora hay mucha gente que vea los problemas de gente como una oportunidad de engaño. Entonces, por favor, tenga cuidado ahora. So now I'm going to switch back to English. I hope that I didn't do too badly. But I would like to introduce again Salvador Cicero. Salvador, I think I first met you when you were the legal counsel to the Mexican consulate. I'm not going to say how many years ago that was, but it was a while ago.
20 years ago.
20 years ago. But since then, you have done many things besides starting a private practice.
Yes.
Now you're involved with, tell us the organizations, what you do.
Well, we have a small public interest firm. We serve primarily international clients. We help them with things like immigration, incorporations, real estate. Our aim is to service small business owners and individuals. We have some large clients, but mostly that's what we do. And I am very involved with our community. I do a lot of community work. So after the Foreign Service, in the Foreign Service, I worked with you, of course, when
Yes.
you were commissioner. We had a very interesting case protecting consumers. That's how we met, working together. And after I went back to Mexico City, where I worked in political affairs under President Fox, so I got to do that. That was interesting. So we did some death penalty work. I'm very happy to say that we no longer have the death penalty in Illinois, so that's good. We don't do that anymore. Then I did human trafficking work. And through that, I worked with the United Nations, the Organization of American States. And I have been advocating for immigrants and their rights since I came back to the States in 2005. So we work for the American Bar Association, volunteer with LULAC, which is a civil rights organization. And with the Hispanic lawyers, we help students become attorneys. We recruit Latinos. We help them get through college. And just generally enjoy being here in Chicago and participating in the community.
That's fabulous. And also, you still work with the Mexican consulate. Maybe you can talk about some of the work you do.
Yes, so the Mexican consulate, as you know, the Mexican government, it's very large, and there is a lot of need in the United States. And so when I left the Foreign Service, right around that time, they started a local advisors program. When I was there as the head lawyer, I started a program because back then we covered five different states. Now the consulate is only concentrated in northern Indiana and Chicago. And so in order to assist people, obviously the consulate can't resolve everybody's problems. So what they do is they have attorneys come and volunteer at the consulate, give free legal advice, and also take on cases. And so as part of that, I have been participating with them since 2008, more or less, as one of their advisors.
So I'm sure there are a lot of workshops on immigration. What other kinds of workshops are given at the Mexican consulate, which is really very close? It's up Ashland Avenue.
Right, it's at Ashland and Adams. Well, they have different, they have something that's called the Protection Department that deals with legal affairs. And they literally run the gamut, anything from labor issues, immigration issues, accidents, accidental deaths. I volunteer my time giving advice to people in civil matters. One of the hardest things, as you know from your work in the Chicago Legal Clinic, is there is some help for people who are detained in criminal matters, but there's very little help for people who need civil issues, right? Like divorces or child support, those kinds of things. So,
Well, again, the courts under Chief Judge Evans has established a lot of free clinics at the different courthouses. Daly Center not only is the Chicago Legal Clinic there, but there are other legal aid societies there helping people on various topics. Also at the courthouses at Markham and Bridget, the Chicago Legal Clinic actually goes out there. Nevertheless, they help people fill out papers, they give advice, but there is no right to a lawyer such as what exists in criminal law. So even with assistance, it's still, when you're running up in a big case or even a small case, it's scary.
right. One of the things that we did last year that I wanted to comment to people is when President Trump first came into office. There was a lot of widespread fear about what has become this anti-immigrant policy. I call it anti-immigrant because I feel that there's a big difference between enforcing immigration laws and really taking this anti-immigrant stance.
Well, calling people names, we've heard this before. We
Yes.
heard it a long time ago in a different country.
Right, of course. Well, I can tell you that a lot of people in the Latino community were very, very scared.
Oh, they still are. That's
Right.
awful.
Well, we know what's been going on in the last week. So it's interesting because what happened is that the Mexican consulate they do training for their own people, right? And so I was invited to do a training for the members of the protection department. God bless you.
Oh, thank you.
And
Between both of us, we're a
Yes.
bunch of germs.
what happened is that as we were doing the training, we realized that there was a lot of need, and we teamed up between the Consulate of Mexico and the Hispanic Lawyers Association of Illinois, and we began doing. Bless you.
Thank
We
you.
began doing a series of training exercises at the consulate, which lasted for the better part of all of last year, to do outreach for people. At the time, people were concerned that if they were detained, they would be separated from their children, which is very odd that this is literally the issue that we are facing this week in the United States. And part of the problem with what was going on is that at the time there wasn't that much of a risk, or so we thought, that people would be separated. And as you know, we work with the Chicago Legal Clinic and the Cook County Volunteer Legal Services to create a sort of a form that we could all agree, and we could tell people, this is the type of documents that you can leave for somebody to take care of your children should you be detained. And as we found out back in the day when you and I first met, there was a lot of abuse. There were people who were charging people $1,500 for something like this. Now, I'm in private practice, and if somebody comes into my office for a service like that, you might charge them between $75 to $150 because it's a 3-page document that you really just fill in there, right? So it's not, as we say, rocket science. But it is important to have legal advice and to have it done properly and executed properly.
Plus, since you're giving your children, basically, you're having someone take care of your children, our standard practice is to make sure that we meet with the guardian,
Right.
or the person who would be the guardian, and we make sure that they bring a police report. We want to make sure that, they don't have any serious crimes, that they haven't been involved in child abuse or a child predator.
And that they are U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents. Now, there is some discussion as to whether that's a true legal requirement, but keep in mind that the strategy we were following was to try to prevent people that if they were themselves taken into custody, they could pass their children on to somebody who had legal status. Now, part of the strategy as well was to have people come in and talk about these issues so that we could also give them advice as to their immigration situation. And so in that regard, it was kind of a dual strategy to bring people into the consulate, give them these forms for free, and also do a sort of short immigration workshop with them. So, and it was pretty successful for the most part.
Oh, it's my understanding that for on a short term, you don't need to go before a judge. The judges require guardians to be either citizens or lawful permanent residents, and it is the best practice if you're going to have a guardianship, even if it's just in case. But it's my understanding, it is not a requirement. But again, just because it's not a requirement doesn't mean that you can't try to engage in what we call best practices.
Right.
So, Salvador, who would have thought that we would be in the situation now? And I understand that today an order was signed stopping the separation of children. This is after universal outrage, airlines refusing to transport children separated from their kids, the Pope, the United Nations. I'm getting emails from different countries saying, what is going on? Who would have thought that we would be taking children, nursing mothers, separating children, and putting them away? Who would have thought that?
Well, that it's a very complex situation to understand, right? So the first thing that we should understand is that it is not a requirement under the law to separate people, right?
No.
So that's the first thing that we need to lay down and understand that. It is a wholeheartedly politically motivated decision. So it is not new that people are arriving at the border with their children. This has always been happening for many years. Now, other administrations would take people, process them, and once they were processed, they would be released on their own recognizance or under the tutelage of somebody who was here. Many times, not necessarily legally in the country. So, and this is how it had been dealt with for many years. One of the things that I don't think the public understands generally is that immigration does not have its own facilities. Here in the Midwest, for example, they have been housing people in counties where they rent space, right? McHenry County, Dodge County, for example, which is I don't know how many hours away. Pulaski County. So they go to the county jails and they place people. Many years ago, we had a facility here that was housing children. And the then Midwest Human Rights Center, which is now called the National Immigrant Justice Center, where I at the time I was volunteer on their board, did a visit, and even then there were problems, right, with that. The problem with the policy now is that they really created a crisis out of thin air because they decided to just create a bottleneck of people who are coming in and just separate all of these people.
They don't even have a plan, from what I understand, to reunite families. So if someone's deported, how are they going to be reuniting a child if the child is in a separate facility? Do they even have accurate records?
Right.
This is, I don't care what your thought is, but this is wrong.
Right. Well, here is one of the issues, right? A practical issue. So this is an issue that has arisen many years ago. When we were here in Chicago, when I was working with a consulate, we had a problem with the CFS, for example, where they would take children into custody and they wouldn't immediately release them to family members. And after much litigation, we signed something called the Memorandum of Understanding, which clearly determines that if you take a foreign national child into custody, state custody, the first line is going to be their family. And if the parents were to get deported, because what some states like Iowa were doing at the time, and this I'm talking about 1998, 1999, they would, let's say they wanted to get rid of a dad who was supposedly abusing their children. And what they would do is they would go to immigration. And so what ended up happening is that then we were forced to take the children that had been taken away into federal custody and send them back to Mexico, because federal law trumps state law. And so quickly, child protection authorities in the Midwest realized that that was not the best way to protect children, right?
Especially the children are born here,
right.
US citizens,
And in that context, remember, we're talking about people who may potentially have harmed their own children. So if you take a person who is a foreign national and you deport them, but you have not terminated their parental rights, they can take the child with them. The reason I'm bringing this up is because this is an issue that authorities have dealt with for many years. And as things have evolved, the authorities in the child welfare system have realized that in order to have family unity and the best interest of the child, you really have to protect that entity. And so this is not a lesson that was carried over to the policy that's being implemented now, which is why there's such an outcry.
Well, I think part of the reason is they're trying to dissuade people from coming in over the border, but a lot of the people are coming in fleeing violence. And if you're coming to the border with a child and you're asking for asylum, you're entitled to have an asylum hearing.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that one of the problems that we are facing now, because I don't think people realize that a lot of these cases are being sent to Chicago. A lot of people that are being detained get sent to everywhere. The case doesn't just stay in the border. They divide them throughout the United States. One of the things that we are seeing is that they are charging people as arriving aliens. So they don't allow them, they don't allow them to leave the custody of immigration. And that causes a burden on us. And here's the thing where I think we, and I mean us that live in the United States, these are our taxes at work. So we have every right to say that we don't agree with the policy because it costs us money to keep all these people. I'll give you another example. So immigration doesn't have facilities, right? So they rent facilities. They rent facilities at a premium. So it might even be cheaper for them to actually build the facilities than to rent the facilities and pay subcontractors to run these facilities, right? So that's number one. Number two, they have designated more money to prosecute immigration cases. So it's not like they can say, oh, we don't have enough money to really take care of these families.
I think that they have actually moved things around because everything, even if you're trying to do something, quote, the legal way, apply to become a lawful permanent resident, try to become a citizen, renew your green card, suddenly what used to take 3 or 4 months is taking 8, 9, 10, 12 months.
Of course.
And so, again, we have a problem. We have a very quick time. I'm going to give a last piece of advice, and that is if you are detained, do not sign anything except that you would like a hearing before a judge. That is my best advice that I can give. What is a bit of advice that you can give also?
The bit of advice is don't listen to random people that you don't know.
Yeah, that's...
Have your family check attorneys who practice in the area and have a consultation or go to one of the clinics. They may not take your case. Unfortunately, most clinics are pretty overwhelmed, but try to find an attorney who will give you the advice as to how to proceed.
I think that's great advice, and I'm going to add just one last thing. So the thing that I'm going to add is no haga nada tonto. Don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything. Don't decide that you're going to do something crazy. You're out with friends. Don't do anything stupid. Just try the best that you can to find out what your options are from people who can lawfully and ethically give them to you. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course.
It's great to see you.
Right back at you.
Thank you, and continue your great work. And I think it's wonderful that the Mexican consulate and other consulates too are really stepping up to the plate to be a resource for people who are here legally, not legally. They're a great resource. I just want to thank the consulates for stepping up.
Yes, and our citizens for being involved. I am very proud of Hispanic Lawyers Association of Illinois and LULAC. There are two organizations I have been a member of for many years, and the membership continues to advocate for all of us.
So that is fabulous. Next month, looking forward to seeing you. I will have a representative here from the Polish American Association who will talk to you about the impact on the Polish community. In the meantime, please be careful out there, con cuidado. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.